Hello, hello. It is Friday night and I'm just getting ready. Good Friday. It's a Good Friday. Friday the 10th of April. Happy Easter, everyone. Friday night, usual Hoshinden philosophy and theory session. This is session number 3 and I'm coming to you live from my house. Hope that you guys are well. I know that I'm a few minutes early, so I'm just going to give you guys a couple minutes to join the group, join the video. Lots of people will gather up the group, and then we'll get started. So I hope that you guys have had a good week, and whatever you've been up to this week, you've been finding solidity and you've been finding substance. And hello, Stephen. How you going? Welcome. Hope that you've been finding that there's always, a silver lining. There's always a way. G'day, Jeff. Hope you've been finding that in the midst of anything, there's always an opportunity. And so we're just starting. I'm just still going to give a few minutes to let, 8 o'clock now? Another couple of minutes to let people jump in and join. And then we'll get started with the chit chat tonight. Hope that you guys are well. Stephen, Jeff, how have you been? Good week? You can type to me in the little chat thing. I'm still working this all out too. I'm having so much fun though. I just did for Craig's dojo, he's got me doing introduction to meditation videos every Friday night, which is a lot of fun. So just been putting them up, and the Wednesday meditation cooking video was awesome. And these Friday night, yeah, I know, Stephen, right? These Friday night sessions, I'm just so enjoying it. It's like, finally, an opportunity to talk when no one gets to tell me that I'm talking too much. Take that, Rory. So, Stephen, have you been well? Just some banter while we wait for more people to jump in and join the group. I hope that you and the family have had a good week. Was it now Easter today? Not Easter today. Easter Friday today, Good Friday. And then we've got Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Long weekend, public holiday. I hope that you're getting ready to go camping in the back garden and sit around in your house, which should be fun. How do mountains hear things, Stephen? I don't know. Just joke of the day. Oh, I have to wait for you to type it out, right? Because I'm the only one who's live. I keep forgetting it. I think it's like Zoom, but it's not, is it? Stephen Leaford says, how do mountains hear things? With mountain ears. Joke of the week. Awesome. Definitely keep them coming, Stephen. For the sake of the people who'll be watching this video as a recording later on. Oh, and there's also people who aren't, they haven't joined us in the Facebook group during this time. They are getting these videos and updates through the YouTube channel. And so I've just started uploading these videos to the YouTube channel for them, so they'll be available. I'll make sure. Oh, good. I'll make sure that that they are ready to go. So this one, usually I'm getting a chance to upload them to the YouTube channel sort of the next day. So I'll try to get this one up tomorrow for the people who are watching us from not Friday night, maybe from the future. Anyway. Hopefully you're well. Welcome to everyone who just joined us. Jump on in. I'm still giving people a couple of minutes to jump online. G'day, Reeve. Hope you're well. How you going, buddy? Treating life well. What was I saying? Oh, yes. So really enjoying the opportunity to do these Friday night video sessions. And the Wednesday night sessions are more like practice, meditation practice of observation, practice of vipassana, and really hone in on observing sensation. But these Friday night sessions are like philosophy theory download. It's really good. Oh, Stephen's next show. What's green and not very heavy? Light green. Nice one. Thank you. I like them. Just keep chatting. I'll keep cutting to you during the break. I'll have to do a co-host one of these. Oh, yes. So, hopefully you've had a good week. This has been a good week on our end. What's happening? Chit-chats with other martial artists. Still got things, projects working on in the pipeline. I've got Nakadai Sensei, Takahari Nakadai Sensei, who has agreed to do an interview with me. So I've asked if he would jump online with me and do a Zoom interview. And he wants to talk. We're going to talk about Japanese culture and historical culture and Budo history, which is awesome. So that's, I don't know, I haven't got a date for that, but that is coming up in the pipeline. Sensei Jeff Smith also, who was on here watching before, he's agreed to do an interview with me as well, so we'll pull that together. Haven't come up with a date just yet. I've been just a little bit busy with other things, but hopefully over the next couple of weeks we'll have some Zoom interviews that I'll do, and I'll be uploading them onto the page. So they're not going to be Facebook Lives or anything. They'll be pre-recorded Zoom interviews, and then I'll upload them as a video with the 2 boxes, and I'll just be asking questions, chit-chatting back and forth. I've actually got a whole bunch of people that I've approached around the world who are really keen to do that kind of thing, and even very close. I've asked Craig Guest and say if he would also jump in and just do an interview with me, answer some questions, and ask about his training. He can sort of present a bit of a history to himself and how he got to where he was, to where he is, and we'll go from there. So I think that I've given everyone enough time. It's 8:05. This is an 8 o'clock starting video, guys. So we'll get kick into it. Last week, the philosophy and theory session was really focused on discussing qualities, not even detailing what the qualities were as such as just underlying or outlining what I mean by quality, what I mean by the metaphor of quality, the archetypes. So what I wanted to do tonight, the topic for tonight, is to discuss more about principles. These 2 things, qualities and principles, they are constantly in relationship with each other, and they define each other and refine each other, but they are not the same thing. It's super important to clarify that. So tonight's topic is going to be all about principles. Principles, very, very generic and vague discussion about principles in martial arts in general, and then a more specific discussion about the principles that are at the heart of Hoshinden. Welcome, Stacey. Come and jump on. Join the group chat. You can type in and say hi during the chit chat. If you scroll up, you'll probably see some of Stephen Leaford's awesome jokes. Okay, so principles. Principles, what we mean by that are fundamental concepts. A concept is something that is like a model, yeah? Now the model is used to understand something. The model isn't the thing. So, for example, we have, in martial arts, it's very vague, principle of balance. It's very generic, and I'm sure that in dance they have the principle of balance, and I'm sure that in bridge building and civil engineering, the principle of balance. In music, the principle of balance. But what each of us mean when we say these words will be completely different. The principles of balance that we're looking at as a martial artist in a physical format are going to look very different than the manifestations of the principles of balance that a band finds, or the principles of balance that an oil painting artist is focused on and discovers. So balance, if we take a step back and we abstract back in perspective, we talk about balance. Balance is a fundamental, and it doesn't necessarily mean standing on 2 feet. It means harmony, relationship. You can't have balance, you can't experience the concept balance if there's only one thing. There have to be multiple things, or 2 things, the very definition. So balance is something that occurs in dualistic systems and onwards through the manifestations of multiple, layers of that. But there isn't balance in a singularity. There isn't a requirement of balance because there's no other reference. So you don't have to be balanced if there's only... I can't even come up with a word that wouldn't be dualistic in nature. So when there's... it's already balanced. It's 100% balanced. In fact, it's impossible to be unbalanced. So the concept of balance then is eradicated because it's not even a possibility of it not being there. It just is just taken for granted. When we jump in... G'day, Pray, Andrew. Welcome. When we talk about balance from a martial arts perspective, obviously we're talking on a physical level, we're talking about weight shifting, movement, structure, the way that you stand, the way that you reflect the force, impact through the body into the ground. And that's all going to be in relationship to forming geometric shapes and structures. So sometimes you could hear simple things, teachers would say things like, when you stand on balance, or you want to move into a position of balance, or you want to capture the opponent's balance. And these are just these are statements and these are concepts, and we understand what they mean, but the principle that underlies them is that you understand what balance is. That's an assumption. It's not always true. If you have a white belt student who comes into the dojo, their first ever class, and you're demonstrating some technique from maybe a attacker comes in to grab your throat and you capture their balance. It doesn't matter how many times you explain it and you show it, and then you get you go through each of the uke and you grab them up and you apply this, and then you get the new white belt and you grab them up and then you get them to grab your throat and you apply and you keep capturing their balance. If they haven't started to grasp the principle of balance, if they haven't yet worked out what do you even mean by balance, I didn't realize that there was even the possibility of not being on balance, then they're not going to grasp the concept. They're not going to be able to use that model to understand what it is you're trying to get them to achieve. They're not going to be able to know what it is they're trying to affect. So it's very different. What usually happens when you see students where that's the case, the teacher will say something like, okay, we're going to capture this person's balance, and we're going to move in this way, and we're going to capture the balance using my control of their head. And the student might interpret that to mean, okay, I have to grab onto their head and I have to move their head. And you're like, maybe that is what you could do, but that's not necessarily how you're going to capture their balance. So there's a difference between the principle that is playing out at heart and the metaphor or the expression of that principle. And this is where the confusion sets in with the concept. So to that white belt student, what might be more useful is actually before the technique, getting them to go off and just walk in straight lines for, 5 years. And then what they'll work out in their own self-observation, or doing maybe like menial techniques, like kumyuchi and grabs and controls, and they'll start to work out that there are times when they feel secure and feel solid and feel able to respond physically and emotionally. And there are times where they feel very unsecure and very slippery, and they feel that they're not in control of their physical being, and therefore they're not in control of the ability to derive power from their physical form. So what they will find through their own self-observation, as you just have them walking up and down and down and up and down and up and up and down and up and down, for millennia, is they'll discover the realms of this concept of balance. And maybe if you're presenting that with a language at the same time, they might start to put two and two together and go, balance the principle of balance has something to do with structure and feeling confident and standing on solid ground and having access to the resources to leverage as power. If I have a balanced, stable footing, then my weight shifting can be on balance and harmonious, and then I can use that relationship to the ground to push against something, or to push towards something, or to direct force in a different manner. Then the technique is self-explanatory. Then when you get 10, 20 students in a ring and you're in a circle in the class and you're discussing and you say, okay, person comes and grabs my throat and I'm going to capture balance, we're going to capture their balance, we're going to move them in this direction. Now the student have understood what the metaphor is. Because the metaphor isn't to capture their balance. That's not a real thing. It's just metaphoric. So the student will be able to kind of, this sounds terrible, but fill in the gaps that don't work for them in the technique. They'll be able to move through and be like, well, I didn't quite understand how, I didn't see half of what the teacher was doing. There was a whole bunch of funky footwork stuff there. I didn't really grasp it, but I do understand the outcome. The goal is I need to cause for the other person a sense of shaky ground. They should lose relationship to strength and structure. And I know from my own study of the principle of balance that in order to derive physical strength, they're going to need to be standing on solid ground. So to push off against the earth, in other words. That way, classes can move really fast. When the students have an understanding of the principles that are the same as the metaphors that the teachers are using, the information travels quickly. Bam, 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 bam. And the teacher gets out and demonstrates techniques, and the students just sponge up the techniques and the information. Not because they're really good at mimicking the technique. Oh, right, left foot, 1, yeah, and then right turn and 6 degrees and 4 degrees. It's not that. It's because they're able to see and they're able to hear and understand metaphorically what the goal is. And then they can reverse engineer that within the construct of the technique to actually understand, I see. I don't understand how my teacher was I don't understand what the methods were that my teacher was doing to capture their balance, but I can see that it was something to do with the feet on the ground and the spine. So I know what the goal is, so I'm going to find out, can I capture balance by exploring the relationship with the feet on the ground? And that would be an awesome use of the principle of balance. And then you'd move on. And these principles, there's so many of these, and they exist as kind of, sound strange, but they exist as like standalone little skill sets. And then you have to take them and apply them to all of your other taijutsu. An example of martial arts examples of martial arts that actually teach using principles are where the students, there's a small number of techniques and a very huge array of natural body training activities. So if you've got a martial art that has like, say, 5 or 10 actual techniques, right, no, do this. Grab the hambo, spin it this way, spin it that way, then take your pinky finger and flip it upside down, and then elbow them, and then back fist them, and then explode. And every student does that in the same way, and it's the same every time they do it, and it's like a cartoon, rote. That technique, hi Hannah, welcome. That technique will be very useful under very specific circumstances. And you'll only be able to apply that technique where, you grab the hammer and you flip it back, and then you take the pinky and flip it and elbow them and back flip them and then explode. You'll only be able to do that when all of the surrounding circumstances are correct. If the entry is wrong, if they attack you with their left hand instead of their right hand, and you spent your whole life studying this technique, right hand, the hambo, back, then if all you have is technique, you'll just crumble into 1,000 pieces. And you're like, oh no, and you say to the mago, no, please, here, can you stab me with your right hand? Because I've really only worked on that. I can't actually do this on the left hand. And they go, oh, I'm so sorry, my mistake. Yes, here, let's go again. Give me your money. And you're like, oh, thank God. Okay, bam. So if you've spent, a decade studying a martial art that has 1,000 techniques and all it is techniques and there's no depth of teaching principles, you're gonna be stuck. You're gonna effectively need to have studied a technique for every conceivable entry. You're going to have to study the technique for all of the bridges and all of the exits. So you'll have a technique for when you're grabbed with their right hand at the throat, and then a technique for when you're grabbed with the left hand at the throat. And you think, I get it, but at the same time, there could just be some principles behind being grabbed by one hand at the throat that you could probably learn and juggle and apply, and you could create henka, variations to technique, in the moment, yeah? Which I personally think is a real star goal of martial arts, of taijutsu. It should be that you've developed such an understanding of principles so well, so solidly, that you have the freedom and the ability and the skill set to manipulate the technique and manipulate the principles at play in the moment, in the heat of it, bit by bit. So you start moving in your thing and then it doesn't work and they've changed how they're going to go. So you just abandon it and immediately move to, because you understand some of the principles at heart, you forget the technique and you move on to the next modification of that technique to make it work. And it's like jumping from solid, stable column to stable column, There are these places of absoluteness, and those places are based on the limits of the human anatomy and biology. So if, for example, the wrist rotates in a certain finite range, so that's a fixed point, yeah? And for the most part, if my wrist rotates outside of that range, it breaks. That's just a fixed. How I actually take and manipulate the movement of the wrist into controlling their balance, or into defending myself against a mugging, or into I'm falling down the stairs and I put my wrists out, and what am I going to do right now, because I've got a moment flying through the air before I capture my weight, and I'm just about to break my wrists. How do I understand? Can I understand the principles at heart of joint rotation and how to apply them in the moment? So that kind of ability is I think, and from the martial arts that I've studied, that's a high level goal. That's actually what you're after. You don't want to become I don't want to become stuck in having to forever mimic exact perfect techniques, you know, and this and this and this. I should work through kata and through waza techniques mimically and repeatedly to the point where I'm starting to extract from them what it is that they're doing to cause an effect, and then build a principle of understanding from that. And then I should start immediately looking in and exploring and developing my understanding of the principle at heart. So, for example, if we talk about the principle of balance, go back to that, the principle of balance from before, this concept of the forward and back motion of the human form. We're on 2 feet, so we're bipedal. And if we were on all fours, this principle would still apply, because 4-legged creatures still have a principle of balance, but the application of it is massively different because the angles have changed. They're not a piece of paper. Yeah, it's not so easy to just push them from up high. Their center of gravity is really low and they're well spread out in triangle bases. So you actually have to remove the legs. Yeah, if you remove their leg connection to the ground, if you want to take control of the balance. Something that's upright, it's very easy, very weak, because triangles need to have 3 points to make them solid. Two base triangle is just a drawing of a triangle on a piece of paper. Yeah, that's not really a triangle in three-dimensional space. So a simple push at the chest will cause the weight shifting to fall back onto the heels. The way that the thighs are designed and the way the core and the knees work, you can't maintain that kind of backwards motion unless you're heavily tensing muscles. There's a point where they're already tensed, and then you can't tense them anymore, and then you're going to fall over unless you take a foot behind you and kind of prop yourself up like a triangle from behind, so that your weight distribution travels diagonally into the ground. So we get that. Anyone who's ever done martial arts, with me at least, you know that quite well. Yeah, it's like most of the techniques we do involve this triangle footwork kind of concept. Now, this idea that it's only a few centimeters of moving the structure back 5 centimeters or 5 centimeters forward, and that completely captures the balance of the individual, that's a principle that you have to learn, and you learn it usually through techniques. So teachers, cheeky teachers, sneaky teachers, good teachers, won't come up and just say, okay, everyone, we're gonna learn about balance, and this is what we're gonna do. This is how balance works. Usually they'll come up and they'll present a technique to you, like a kumiuchi, so a grabbing technique, like a judo technique, and then you'll be taking turns to flatten the individual like paper, and then to offset them. And what you work out pretty quickly is A, how to flatten and manipulate the flatness, the paperness of the opponent, and B, how to avoid being flattened and manipulated yourself. A couple of weeks, couple of rounds of that activity, those students have really developed a good principal understanding of balance, yeah, of basic footwork balance. And then they're ready to move on to more advanced techniques that require that. So principles, there isn't like a list of principles. There could be to a degree, but it still wouldn't be exhaustive, because principles are constantly being built individually. So the principles of balance that I utilize are generic to human structure, and I could apply them to 4-legged, probably 3-legged things, but really most of my thought time about that principle is all relating to humans. It's all about humans, manipulating humans, throwing humans, being thrown by humans, being pushed around by humans, pushing humans. It's all humans. I have to kind of take a moment and reassess when I look at a dog or a bull, and I think, I get it. I have to take the leg, take 2 of the, or get a 3-legged stool and try to flip it. And what you do is you start going back to the base denominator. You go, I've got to make it a flat piece of paper again. And you just get rid of the 3rd leg. Problem solved. So building these principles is not something that you can just pump out. It's a student by student by student by student idea. And what the techniques should do is they should prompt you to realize something's going on. So the Hoshinden techniques, the hope and the design with them is that through repeated practice of them and application of them, some very simple things come to pass, and you come to work out that these rhythms and these cycles work time and time and time again, and you build your own library of principles. For example, in lightning, study of lightning, so sometimes we have these techniques where we say, okay, person comes to grab your wrist, and rather than having your wrist there to be grabbed, it moves, your whole body moves, and the wrist is now a few centimeters further away than it was. So that, and what that's a principle of understanding is the opponent overshooting. And so you could kind of say it's a balance principle again, but it's more about, it's like a principle of manipulation and almost like hypnotic control of their end point of their control. So if they are reaching out to grab your wrist and it moves just an extra little bit back, they fall slightly. And that little gap that they fall into, where it's just enough that they don't step or stop what they're doing, but it kind of catches them out. They went to grab your wrist and it just wasn't there, and they just fall just a bit. That moment is when you apply your technique. That's where you understand, I've got them, because all of a sudden they're not thinking about my wrist. For a moment they're worried about their feet. And so they blink, and just as they slipped and went to grab me, they suddenly were thinking about their hips, their body, their core, their back, their bum, their knees, their feet. That's what they're focused on. And the whole world has vanished. I've vanished. I've gone away. They've forgotten that they were grabbing my wrist for a split moment. That's your opportunity to enter the technique. Bam! Then you control. So in that idea, what you start to work out, that's just a technique. Yeah. That technique can be applied. It doesn't just have to be a wrist grab. That technique can be applied at the throat grab. Can be applied at yelling. You've already been grabbed, and you're like, "Oh, look over there! What's that?" And they turn. All these ideas. There's a principle that underlies those, which the student has to develop an understanding of. You call it whatever you like, yeah? You call it, you could probably name it something like the principle of mistiming, or the principle of timing. I suppose it's just a component of timing. This idea that if you can manipulate timing, then that's another opportunity for you to enter techniques and start processes and systems that are useful for you, yeah? The attacker wasn't thinking that was even an option, that you could suddenly magically appear behind them. So if I talk about timing and I get into a situation, I get in class, they go, okay, I'm going to do this, and I grab my okay out, and thanks Jim, and it's like I'm demonstrating all this really back and forward timing kind of concept. That technique might just be made up on the spot. Unless it's a kata or it's a waza that's written down, I might just be making up that series of steps in the moment, because what I want the class to grasp is an understanding of experimenting with distancing and timing, and I want people to develop a principal understanding of timing. So you could create a technique that is like an exercise that just helps people to slowly work out that as they go trial and error. Oh, I didn't move enough. Oh, I moved too much. Oh, when I move too much, it doesn't work. They stop. When I don't move enough, I still get grabbed. When I move in the opposite direction too much, we hit heads together. It's like, there's all these trial and error. Oh, this worked, that didn't work, that worked, that didn't work, that worked, that didn't work, which you go through and you process, and one bit by bit, you build a picture of what it is that your actual goal is. I was never interested in not being grabbed on the wrist. That was just a mechanism. That was just an avenue to do what I wanted, which was to capture their thinking mind, to control their perspective, their perception of the surrounding environment. I want to literally cause them to forget about me for a split moment, and use that as my entry point to defend myself in the technique, in the circumstance. If I grasp that as a principle, well, suddenly that's applicable everywhere, you know. They walk towards me and they go, hey, and I walk a little bit faster towards them, and they end up a bit kind of squished back. And in that moment, they're not thinking about me. They're busy, hey, we're close all of a sudden, you know. How many times have you you've been on the escalator, you've been walking, you jump on the escalator, and you stand there, and then you're busy, and suddenly you go to step off and you kind of overstep because you misunderstood, or you weren't really paying attention, you miss the timing of the step. You thought there were 2 steps, but there was only one. So you take a step and you take another step, and there isn't a thing there, and you kind of fall into the ground. Not because your legs have gone anywhere, but because that wasn't your plan. Yeah, your plan was step up. So you're kind of preparing your body and your structure and your mass and all this movement for an up step. And when your foot cavitates back to the same level, a level that you weren't expecting, all the preparation you had fights against you. You suddenly find yourself thrown forward. You know, people like hurl themselves at the ground by accident at the top of the escalators. And it's bizarre. You think, well, you'd never do that unless you really genuinely had convinced yourself that reality was different or you were distracted. If you can get someone to come and grab at you and you suddenly arrive really quickly, they have to take a moment because their plan is now disassociated from the reality, and they have to adjust. When people are adjusting those disparate relationships between their perception of reality and the experience of reality, they're inside themselves fully. That's an entirely internal process, yeah? Because reality just is. It's just the way that things are. You don't have to perceive that. There's nothing to do outside in the world to perceive that. That's all an internal cognitive approach. So that's an entry. That's a principle. So you go, oh, wow, I've developed these principles, these understandings of principles of balance and timing. Cool. Another principle, structure. Wow. Amazing. And I'm giving these, these are just hypothetical words. Or rather, real words, hypothetical names for these principles. You call them whatever you want. These are just how I've defined these for me. And principles are incredibly important to grasp, but unfortunately, I can't just give you a book of principles because all it would be filled with are methods and activities to cause you to twist your thinking to observe something in a way that you're not yet observing it. That's, if you think about how it is that you learn these principles, you slowly change your observation under pressure. So it's only when you're being grabbed and you're doing that kumyuchi and that judo throw and you're being twisted and flipped that you're suddenly observing your structure in relationship to this context that maybe you've never even thought about before. So it would be foolish to think that before that you would be able to respond. Yeah, like that's like saying you've never spoken a word of French in your life. But I think that in about 5 minutes you'll speak French fluently because we're going to put you in a French class and everyone's speaking French, and so you'll be fine. And you're like, well, no, you'll be fine in a year if no one around you, if you suddenly just wake up and you're in the middle of France and no one speaks English and they only speak French and your only opportunity for surviving is to learn French, then you'll probably be fine in like 3 or 4 months, enough to get by, and maybe in 6 months you'll be able to chit-chat, and maybe in a year you'll be able to express more like concepts and philosophy. But you're not going to be fine in that first day. You're probably going to starve to death first, yeah? That doesn't make any sense. You're going to really struggle first before you start to under requirement, build your library. It's the same thing in martial arts. If what you're doing is working, then you're probably not really going to bother learning something new. It's only when you're up against someone and you're really, really good, you always find at this with the same height, but suddenly you've got like a 6.5 foot opponent, and man, you're just floored. Doesn't matter what you do, you cannot manipulate their structure. That's when you go back to your drawing board and you suddenly realize that, yeah, you had an understanding of balance and you had an understanding of structure, but it was still just a beginning understanding. That's like saying, oh, I can speak some French. It's very different from I can speak French, yeah? I can speak some Russian is not the same as I speak Russian. So I can grasp the idea of balance is very different from I understand balance. And I don't think anyone in the world, if anyone knows what's good for them, never ever would they come out and state, I understand balance, I understand structure, I understand this, I understand that. Because you're just setting yourself up to fall from grace, yeah? Like, it's just never going to happen. You're constantly in a journey of, or all of us are constantly in a journey of finding the limits through this trial and error and then applying it in the real world. Take it out, work with the person who's the same height as you, find it, apply it. Does it work? It's a very scientific approach. Here's my hypothesis, my goal, my aim, my experiment. Does this work? Yes, great. Oh, does it work again? Yeah. Oh, 9 times out of 10, success. And then the mistake we make is we go, I've learned balance. I'm like, no, you've understood, you've shown that you can correctly manipulate balance in these circumstances to someone the same height and body weight in this technique. And that should cause us all to kind of deflate a little bit and be like, oh, can you imagine then if you had to take every single one of your principles, every principle you've ever developed, and you have to apply it en masse in every scenario in a martial arts setting of every body type and height and situation to really flesh out the principle. So you can say, I understand the principle of balance manipulation. Because maybe you've just been getting lucky. But when you can apply that to same height, 6.5 foot tall, 4 foot tall, skinny, massive, wearing armor, on a horse, on a chair, on a beach ball, with a knife. It's like you can keep showing yourself that you can constantly manipulate the circumstances to control the same underlying principle. Then you're probably closer to being able to say that you understand to some degree what the principle of balance is. And I think that what we find as martial artists is that this awesome bell curve kicks in, like that. So initially we learn a few fundamental principles. We learn the principles of balance, structure, and timing very, very soon on, early on, because most of, especially in Hoshinden, most of the kata, the white belt kata, the red belt, and the orange belt techniques are actually built to convey the information that students will use to build an understanding of balance, structure, and timing. That's what that's for. Yeah, you can't move forward if you don't have those 3 basic things. So they're gonna learn these things, but they're learning them in contexts of classes with loving other students and peers and teachers, hopefully, generally. People who care about their well-being, people who want to help them succeed. So even if they're really moving terribly, the opponent, the uke, will kind of throw themselves to the ground 20 or 30% of the time, just so that the student doesn't feel like a complete failure. Yeah. So that in the French class, in that example, when you don't even know, you just point at things and hope for the best, and the people take pity on you and pretend that you've communicated well, but all they're doing is supporting your lack of French with their other, they're looking at what you're pointing out and you're saying this, and they go, I think he wants 5 bananas. They're really just compassionate towards you. You haven't really learned, you're not speaking French, you're just pointing and they're just out of their generosity and humanity, they're helping you not starve to death by giving you bananas. So in the class, you fail, and I knew you got it. And your partner going, yeah, I know what you're trying to achieve and you're not really achieving it, but you are going to need to just do this for the next 6 months before you even start to understand what it is that you're trying to do, let alone actually be able to succeed at it. So because I think that, I'm a compassionate person, I'm gonna help you feel like you're getting it. I'm gonna, oh, you really got me, and throw myself to the ground, the Aikido videos, and touch, backflip out of the window. Ooh. If that happens, if you've got a partner doing that, they're being really loving, they're being really caring, because chances are you're just gonna drown for months and months and months, and unless you've got a lot of staying power. Yeah, that's right, Jess. Unless you've got a phenomenal amount of staying power, you're going to get really disillusioned. And there's a reason when you look at martial arts and these kinds of principle-based things, there's a reason that it's a phenomenally pointy triangle. It's not because the people at the top are extremely talented. It's not that the people at the top of that pyramid were born into talent. They were the chosen ones, and their spirit rise. It's just that they're the ones who were still there. I'm a good example of that. Some of my teachers, I don't know if Jeff, you're still watching, you stayed at the start of the video, but when I started as a student, I was one of 350 other students, in my teacher's school. Like, I was just no one. And again and again and again, I kept finding students, I kept meeting other students who were mind-blowingly talented, extremely talented people. Amazing. Some of the skills they could whip out and their ability to mimic and understand. And I really struggled with a lot of mimicking. You know, I don't know what it is about my makeup, but everyone else would stand in a circle and watch sensei, and I would be, without fail, at the back of the circle, having to copy every single movement, step, look, turn, just so that I could even remember what the hell it was that I just did when we got back together in a group with a training partner, and then I start, and it's my turn, and I have to literally build like a robot. This, that, he stepped his left foot, right elbow, punch. That's hard going, you know. And I look around, and there were people who kind of looked and they went, aha, whoopah! And then just the people flipped over their back and triple backflip, somersault, and then they stand and they're like, okay, next technique. And it's quite demoralizing, you know. It's very hard. But all that happened was, I just was so stubborn, I just didn't give up. I was like, well, I'm not getting it now, and I'm going to keep turning up, keep turning up, keep turning up, keep turning up. Oh look, 20 years went by, and now I'm the head of a school. No one saw that coming, you know. There were students, there were colleagues, peers of mine who were students who were far, far more talented than I was as a martial artist, who aren't running martial arts schools. You know, they're working, stacking shelves somewhere. It's great. They just didn't want to do that. They obviously didn't. They didn't want to still be there. They didn't want that enough to stick around to achieve those things. But the position that I found myself in is not through skill and talent. If there's skill there, it's through hard-won trial and error and success and failure in developing a principle understanding. And then magically, you know, the harder I work, the luckier I become, that old adage. Magically, I find that, these principles make more sense now. I do understand more about balance structure. I do understand more about capturing thought and attention. I do understand more about controlling the spine. But I go overseas, I go travel and train with my teachers, and they take pity on me because I really don't understand. You know, or one of my favorite teachers famously said to me, asking him, I won't name names, asking him whether, we were talking about the Westerns in the class, and I was asking him about whether he felt that I had the ability to grasp what he was teaching at that time. And he said, look, I think you have lots of good points. So as soon as you just round them out, you'll be very good. And it was like both a compliment and a criticism at the same time. It's this idea of like where they were so far down, you know, 40 years ahead of me, some of them. Like the teachers, if I've been training for 20 years, and I've got teachers who've been training for 60 years, they're 40 years down the path. So if we're talking about balance, structure and timing, their ability to understand what that means and to manipulate the circumstances to make that work under a hugely broad set of contexts is mind-blowing to me. And it's in the same way that I understand that the position that I'm in, if a white belt comes in, someone new joins a class, they've never done martial arts in their life, they've never done any kind of, they've never even contemplated, you know, anatomy and force relationships and geometry of force. And then they come into a class and they look at someone like myself, and I look like I'm way down on the horizon of the planet. And they're like, oh my God, amazing, the things that this guy can do. And what they forget is that, from my perspective, I'm standing on the middle of my little ball, and I look over at my teachers standing on the edge of the horizon, you know, 4 years down the track, and I think, oh my God, amazing. I can't even understand how they do what they do. I can see the effects, but I don't even remember. It's like I look and I look and I look and I video it, and I cannot work out for the life of me. What was the method? How did they do that? How did they capture balance in that context? And so then it's like, there's my work. I have to expand my understanding of the principle of balance. And I do so by going back to my training, back to my waza, my study, my technique, back to my activities. If my teachers, again, some of my teachers are incredible people, you know, one of them, in my recent trip to Japan, just in January this year, I asked one of them for some help during one of the drink breaks. And he came up to me and, true to form, looked at me and he said, copy this. And we just walked zigzags over the line in the mats. And he was walking zigzag in a very specific way and shifting his weight in a very specific way. And I laughed and I said to him, you know, this is what I say to my students. I go back to Australia and get my students and they are really struggling at understanding how to manipulate this structure. And they ask me, what can they do to help? And I say, okay, we're going to walk over the lines. And I laughed at him because I said, this is lovely. It's a nice opportunity to be in the position where you, my teacher in that context, are looking back at me with such an understanding of where I'm at because of your broader perspective, that you know how to create an activity or a technique that will be the most effective way of me answering my own question long term. And we're doing the exact same things for the people behind us. And my teacher said to me, this is what his teachers tell him to do. So he goes to his teachers who've been training for, 70 years, 75, 80 years. And he asks them questions and they go, walk with me. And they do zigzags over the line. And it's just funny, to think that the activity hasn't changed. The potential for learning hasn't changed. Their teachers and them as my teachers, and then me as teachers for my students, we're all using the exact same activity. It's like having only one hammer. And this one hammer builds everything you could ever dream of imaginable, but only in the hands of someone who knows how to use the hammer. And so it's the exact same hammer, but the hammer at different points will be expressed in different beautiful manifestations. And so it was a fun opportunity for me to remember that if I want to continue, there isn't anything more that I need to do. I don't need to go out and seek the super guru head Dai Shihan of Moonlight School because he's got the special one hit punch left pinky technique. I've probably already got everything that I need to continue to develop from where I currently am to where I want to go. And when eventually I find something that I get stuck on, glass ceiling, I ask my teachers, and they either will show me a new activity that I hadn't contemplated before that helps me arrive at that point, or they'll probably just direct me back to an activity that I'd kind of moved on from, forgotten about, thought that it was beneath me, or, I've done that, I don't need to do that anymore, I've done horse stance for freaking years, I'm done with horse stance, I've retired from horse stance now. And then I asked this question, hey teacher, I find that I'm really struggling to understand how to drive forward with my structure from my core and my feet. And they go, and then we do horse stance for 4 hours. And I remember that these things are just like infinite cups. This is what the kata are. The kata are effectively like having a Mary Poppins bag of learning. There is no depth deep enough. Like, there is no basement to the level that they can just continue to take you. You can just extract and 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 extract, and then extract more, and then extract more, and then finally extract more. And you just do that, and then one day die. And all the people behind you, if we're learning, we look forward and we go, oh my God, my teachers, right up from the start, right until the day they died, were pretty much just doing the kata and pretty much just working, chipping away at things. And that's all they did for 80 years. And look at them. They're unfathomable. They're like, Buddha demigods. You can't grasp how it is they can do what they do. But those principles revealed themselves, through the basic activities. So we go back talking about these three principles. There's thousands of principles, but just putting them in this little box of balance, structure, and timing. If an activity about balance for self-observation and learning of balance could be this kumiuchi with another individual, or maybe even just walking. So just having the mats. I always get you guys, for the students of mine, with the zigzags, the jigsaw meets the mats. You're just walking, and we walk, and we observe the placement of the feet and the weight shifting, and whether it's like a natural walking exercise. Whether one foot has a shake on the ankle, that'll show whether you've got how your weight distribution is going there, and where your placement is, and whether you're actually consciously aware of your foot placement. That activity, I still do that activity. When I can get to the dojo, I spend time after class, usually on a Friday night. If we finish class, my Friday night adult jam class, you guys all go home, I put the roller door down, and then I just walk, and I grab a sword and I walk with sword, and I'm just walking, and I walk with line, and then this context of walking, then walking under this scenario, and walking with this weapon, and walking with that headpiece and that armor, and I just contemplate, how can I keep observing and take this beyond, where I currently am? That is what principles are. It's not something that you can put on a bowl in a little dish and give to someone. I can write down in a piece of paper a technique or an activity, and I can flesh out, like the teachers can flesh out the method of this approach, or the method of this activity, and that's it. And then they give that to you, and it's literally just black on white. It's just black text on a white piece of paper. Maybe it's as hollow as that and as shallow as that. And if I give that little piece of paper to someone who's been training for martial arts for 50 years, and I give that piece of paper to someone who's just started, the same activity, the same hammer, is going to provide enormously different experiences for those two individuals. That's nothing to do with the activity. The activity is infinitely deep. Yeah, it's just where the students are at, where the martial artist was at, in their ability to actually be ready to hear the next level of concepts or understanding. So, what I find a lot of fun, my teachers who I studied very closely with, and so some really key teachers over my life over the last couple of decades, who I've had the wonderful opportunity of studying very close to, either like basically private study or 5 or 6 years of just extremely small classes and lots of one-on-one sessions. What I really enjoy now is I look at them and the way they move, and I watch them, it's like whatever, we're doing a technique, I don't know, wrist escape from opposite wrist grab, bad, simplest technique in the world, yeah? And I look at the way that they're moving, and I can see in them the exact same principles of movement that I have copied from them. But they are 40 years down the track, or 20 years down the track. And what I can get a glimpse into is like, not a goal, but that's the direction. If I continue to just explore those principles in my little activities, in my own way, that's an opportunity for me to get to. I will inevitably arrive there if I keep chipping away. If I get in my car in Melbourne, as a metaphor, and I set off on the Hume Highway and I'm going to drive to Sydney, I will get there. It's absolutely inevitable that I will get there. The only reason I would not get there is if I gave up and turned around and came home. Or, the world ends before I get there. But like, if I just chip away and I just keep driving and I'm heading in the direction, I'm confident in the direction I'm going, and there's people, who are up, and I see billboards that someone's waving and they're like, hey, it's me, 20 years ahead, I got to Sydney. And I'm like, I'll get there, I just have to drive. Then you get there, yeah? I look at my teachers and I see that some of them are 20 years, 10, 15, 20, 25 years ahead of me. And I can see in them a more mature application of a principle or understanding that, or even a way of moving that I have now. I can work out, that's how I'm going to get there. That's how that's going to feel. That's how that's going to look. That's part of how it's going to taste. Maybe in 10 years or in 20 years. And I know what will happen because it's already happened to me. Where I am now, 20 years down the track from where I started, I am at where I looked at some of my teachers, where they were at when I was watching them when I was just starting. And I couldn't even fathom how they got there. And now I'm here, but I look at them and they're 20 years further down the track, and I'm like, oh my God. And I know that in 20 years, I will be experiencing the maturity of that way of moving and that kind of understanding just like where they are, and I'll look at them and they'll be 60 years down. There'll be another 20 years ahead. And I'll never catch up, you know. Even when they die, they'll just become immortals, and then I'll never catch up. And it's just this kind of funny comedy, you know. It's like this ironic circus that we all play. So we've got about 5 or 6 minutes left in this video, and I want to kind of peel it back by summarising out this idea of principles. Principles are not written techniques. Principles are concepts of understanding about how something works. Not the method of manipulation, but the mechanics that underlie. So, for example, there's billions of methods towards deconstructing balance or disrupting an individual's balance. Millions of entries and ways and techniques and thoughts and methods, but the principle is very simple. Now, we might study it for a lifetime and keep extracting depth of understanding, but the principle is just consistent. The mechanisms of balance are consistent across all two-legged individuals, yeah? Like, until a human grows a third leg, those mechanisms of balance will work for the next 20,000, 50,000 years. They're just gonna keep rolling on. They've worked for the last 20,000 years, it's gonna roll into the future because the mechanism of the principle is the same. The method is different. So we're talking about something like the mechanism of the principles of communication. They're still the same. The same mechanisms are at play. The methods are different. Now we can video each other, we can talk through these different mediums, but the mechanisms haven't changed. The mechanisms of what the principles of communication are, what it is that's happening during communication. In a martial art context, the mechanism of timing, the mechanisms of the principles of timing are consistent. That's just due to the realities of physics, yeah? But the methods that I take to apply those and to express those and to explore that, those are what's up for grabs. And that's why there's 100,000 different martial arts styles. That's why everyone has a different method. You know, one of my favorite philosophies, as like a modern, I think it was a modern Eastern philosophy, was this idea of like, there's no method. There are no methods. All methods are shambles. All methods are lies. And he's talking about concepts of enlightenment and philosophies of spiritualism. Says there's no methods. If you want, I can tell you, get up at 6 every day and stand on one leg and shake your hands and say these words at the sun and do that every day, and then this is how. And there are no methods, but if that's how you want to do it, so that you can arrive at the understanding the relationship between you and infinity, then that's of value to you. But don't fool yourself into thinking that that's the method. That's just what you did. You know, and Shakyamuni Buddha has this great saying from one of his sutras. It says 80,000 paths. Just pick one. No one cares. I love it. It's this idea that like all roads lead to Rome. So it doesn't actually matter. Plumber, circus performer, physicist, musician, swimming coach, labourer, carpenter, electrician, cook, flower arranger, office worker, project manager. They're all leading to the same place. Yeah, all roads lead to Rome. So it doesn't actually matter. It's not like you have to choose the right one. Oh, the correct profession for really getting to understand the principles of the universe is plumber. Okay, good. Now I should go become a plumber and study plumbing school and become an enlightened plumber and join the great guild of sacred plumbers. Plum, and we have a special chat, and then we can all become plumbers, and then the true way of plumbing. Meanwhile, the irony is those people would never even arrive there. Someone who's doing flower arranging on the corner would be just thrilled by the principles of beauty and how it is that certain flowers that sit a certain distance from other flowers and of certain colours and hues, when they're put together, they just seem beautiful. They evoke beauty, and so there's a principle of beauty. You know, why is it, and this is a good question to lead you on, just for a bit of fun, this is a koan. Why is it that certain colours sit next to each other and we say they're beautiful? Oh, beautiful. And others were like, oh, it's horrible. Oh, yuck. You know, oh, definitely don't wear that and that. Ugh. But that's beautiful, that's great. I'm like, well, what is that? There's a principle at heart there, but the methods are up for grabs. The methods change every day, because then someone the next day could wear the exact same colours in the exact same outfit options, and suddenly it's beautiful. When yesterday it was gross and disgusting. You know, there's something else going on than just pure methodology. So I'll leave you with that. 8:59. Look, one of the benefits of these videos is I'm actually on time, start to finish. Bam! No more 3-minute, 2-hour philosophy conversations. I hope you have a wonderful Easter weekend, guys. And I'll stick around for a few minutes afterwards, after the video on the Facebook page. So jump on the chit chat and comment if you want to say hi. I can answer any questions. If you get an opportunity over the next couple of days, 5 days or so, then continue your ideas, thinking about these things, and then come back and get back to me. Oh, Stephen's last joke. If you choke a Smurf, what colour does it go? Seems too obvious to say blue. What colour does it go, Stephen? Hi, Jess. Still waiting for Stephen. Stephen, I need the I need the punchline to the joke. Maybe maybe it's just a riddle. I get it. If you choke a Smurf, what colour does it go? Dead. Alright guys, have an awesome evening. Happy Easter. Hope that I don't know, Stephen. You should write that in like a Zen riddle book for the ages. I hope that you and your families are well, and that you are finding ways of thriving. Remember my initial demands for you all in the first video, that I expect, Stephen says it's already blue, I expect that you already have within your ability, from all of your study of martial arts, the ability and the opportunity to thrive under these circumstances. If the world is afraid, you should be able to thrive massively. Yeah, there is always opportunity where there is loss. And if you've been studying strategy through martial arts, as a principle, the principles of strategy, you should apply them. Now's the time to apply them. Yeah. Find out whether you've really been able to actually take what you've been learning in the physical and distill a principle of understanding from it. Oh, last one. Stephen says, how do you light up a stupid man's eyes? I don't know, Stephen. How do you light up a stupid man's eyes? This is another one of those riddles? Or am I waiting for a punchline that doesn't come? Shine a light in his ears. That's good. Alright guys, until next week, remember that I'm doing my Wednesday night meditation and Qigong videos, 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, Facebook Live, Wednesday nights, and I'll see you there, or I'll see you next Friday. Have a fantastic evening. Bye.